there's something I notice about myself after big ministry seasons, like busy ones. Maybe you do too about yourself. Christmas probably the most obvious for me, but maybe for you it's Easter, maybe a conference, a youth retreat. Really, it's about any stretch where the pace is high and the expectations feel kind of heavy. So like for me, right now, we're in the middle of a 21-day fast for our church. A lot of churches do this. We have a lot of extra services. And spiritually, it's intense and powerful and fun, really. But physically, it can be exhausting. Maybe like Christmas, right? Extra meetings, extra rehearsals, you're building up to this one moment. Maybe you're in a growth season where you got to add a service or two. Spiritually, right? Like again, powerful, exciting. But physically, it can be more demanding, more pressure for you, for your team. And if we're not careful, and I've learned this the hard way, we don't pace ourselves during the season, or the season is over and we don't slow down. We just move on. And so it kind of looks and feels like dedication, but quietly it can turn into something else. Coming out of these heavy seasons, it's easy to replace the need for rest accidentally, unknowingly, with resentment. We don't usually say this out loud because we don't know it, but we feel it. We get short with people, maybe our family. Little things start bothering us at church. Decisions that we had to make that used to come easy, or now we're questioning everything. And here's the thing that makes this really tricky. Resentment is not like announcing itself. It's disguised. Sometimes that's spiritual discernment. Like we'll be like, spiritually, something's off spiritually. I can feel it. And sometimes that is true, right? But a lot of the time, it's just that we're exhausted because we didn't take care of ourselves. We didn't pace ourselves along the way. We didn't have healthy rhythms. And I've heard Chris Tomlin, who's one of the worship leading goats, right? Like Mount Rushmore, he'd be on Mount Rushmore, talked about as his career grew, he focused on guarding his time and his heart more than anything else. And I think, yeah, of course, right? Like big stages, big crowds, CCLI charts. But the truth is, this is a human problem, not a platform problem. It might get amplified if the platform's bigger, but we all deal with it. Like it applies to anybody who leads and serves and pours out. And I'm not talking about like a guy who has a busy job, who works on the top floor of a skyscraper, right? I'm talking about worship leaders and pastors. We're vulnerable at this because we're good at pushing through. And a lot of it is because we love what we're doing. We believe in it because we're combining two things together, worship and telling people about Jesus. This is what we're made to do. So we learn that how to show up tired. And then that moves on to how we show up on empty and push through. And then we push through and then we can't figure it out. We think something's spiritually wrong. Just because you can push through doesn't mean you should. The rest has to be maintenance for staying healthy during a season and after the season. And when we miss rest long enough, that's when resentment starts to creep in and it starts to shape how we see everything. And then the resentment shifts to blame. And so that's usually what comes next, right? Like resentment takes root. We're looking around. Oh, I'm going to blame my pastor, my team, the rhythms, blame the environment. It's the room, it's the sound. Something feels wrong. The system is wrong. The production is distracting. You know, I've led worship in environments where it felt powerful with nothing. Environments where there's full production, where worship felt just as powerful and sincere. But for a long time, I made the mistake of connecting God's presence to the setting. And I'd look back and I'd say, man, when there was no band and no sound and lights, and I was in that basement, it felt more spiritual. Or that camp in the middle of nowhere in Africa where I led, that felt more real. And without realizing it, I was shrinking God down to the circumstances I wanted. And this is the why behind the story of the Heart of Worship that Matt Redman wrote. And if you don't know that story, you should definitely look it up in detail. It wasn't about eliminating instruments or structure. It was about refocusing the hearts of his church that had drifted. The problem wasn't production. It wasn't systems. It was misplaced attention. And here's the danger when we get tired. Exhaustion makes us confuse the simple things with spiritual things. We start thinking, man, if we just got simpler, if we stripped all this away, worship would feel pure again. God isn't more present in smaller rooms than he is in big ones. He's not absent in organized ones. God's presence doesn't change. What changes is our capacity to notice it when we're kind of running on empty. So we got to reframe this. This is the reframe, like the reframe that brought clarity for me. Strong systems are not the enemy of a heart of worship. Structure isn't the enemy of a heart of worship. Production isn't a problem. Lights don't replace devotion. LED walls don't replace surrendering your heart to Jesus, because the heart of worship was never a production thing. It's a heart thing. It's literally the heart of worship. Hearts don't belong to rooms or light rigs or resources. They belong with people and to God. Worship environment issues aren't technology. Sometimes that's exhaustion. When leaders are worn down, even good systems feel like they're weighing us down. Even helpful structure starts to feel like controlling. That's why healthy rhythms matter so much. It's not just personally for leaders and pastors, but also organizationally for churches, for ministry teams. The systems we create should serve the people we're leading and the people that are serving. And people need rhythms that allow them to rest, recover, see clearly. The answer isn't tearing everything down and starting over and romanticizing a different environment. It's tending to the heart along the way. Because when the heart is healthy, worship isn't dependent upon the environment or the setup or even the set. It's dependent upon our heart surrendering. So if you're coming out of a heavy season and everything feels off to you, pause, take a deep breath before you assume something is spiritually broken. If you need help, you can reach out to me, seek counseling, pray, rest, restore. It might not be a worship issue. It might be a rhythm issue. Rest might be the most spiritual step you can take. So try that. I hope this helps.